Chapter 7. The Doubt. The apartment felt smaller when he returned to it. Elias noticed this immediately, though nothing had changed. The same books lined the same walls, the same light filtered through the same Venetian blinds. The same silence filled the same spaces where a life had been lived, and a philosophy had been constructed. Yet everything felt diminished now, shrunken somehow, as though the walls themselves had contracted during his absence. As though the rooms had been waiting for him to leave so they could exhale and collapse inward, pressing against the furniture and the memories, and the man who had spent 2 decades hiding within them. Chicago had done something to him. He could feel it still, the residue of that visit clinging to his skin like the faint scent of hospital antiseptic, like the ghost of his sister's embrace. He had seen her life. He had seen her children. He had seen the hospital where she worked, the patients she tended, the impossible hope she cultivated in rooms that smelled of fear and disinfectant, and the stubborn refusal of human beings to surrender to the darkness. He had seen the joy that he had spent his entire life denying, and he had been forced to confront the possibility that he had been wrong about everything. The thought unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. For decades, his philosophy had been his armor, his shield against the chaos and cruelty of existence. He had polished that armor until it shone, until it reflected back at him the image of a man who had found the truth, who had seen through the illusions that trapped lesser minds, who had discovered the only rational response to the human condition. That armor had protected him from the pain of connection, from the terror of loss, from the vulnerability that came with loving anything that could be taken away. And now, standing in his darkened study, surrounded by the evidence of a life spent in service to an idea, he felt that armor beginning to crack. The fissures were small, barely visible, but they were there. Hairline fractures in the edifice of his certainty, letting in the faintest sliver of light, the faintest whisper of doubt. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sky was gray, the color of slate, the color of his eyes. A light rain had begun to fall, misting the glass, blurring the towers and the bridges and the tiny figures moving through the streets below. He watched them for a long time, those anonymous souls going about their business, and he tried to see them the way his sister saw them, as beings of infinite worth, as vessels of joy and love and meaning, as something more than the sum of their suffering. He could not do it. He could see the suffering. The suffering was everywhere, written on their faces, etched into their postures, visible in the way they hunched their shoulders against the cold. He could see the fear, the loneliness, the quiet desperation that animated their movements. He could see all of that, and he could feel the weight of it pressing down on him, the weight of all those lives, all those deaths, all that pointless, endless striving. But he could also see something else now, something he had never seen before, something that looked almost like grace. He remembered Sophia, the little girl in the hospital bed. He remembered the spark in her eyes, the spark that refused to die, the spark that had persisted through chemotherapy and pain, and the certainty of her own mortality. He remembered the way she had smiled at him, this stranger who had appeared in her room, this gaunt and hollow man with the cane and the haunted eyes. She had smiled at him, and she had taken his hand, and she had said, "You look sad. Do you want to see my drawings?" He had said yes. He did not know why he had said yes. He had said yes, and she had shown him a collection of crayon drawings, crude and bright and full of a child's unself-conscious joy. There were drawings of flowers and rainbows, and a dog that looked more like a potato with legs. There were drawings of her family, stick figures with enormous smiles, and drawings of the hospital, which she had rendered as a castle with turrets and flags. There were drawings of the sky, which she had colored in shades of pink and orange and gold. And there, at the bottom of one page, a single sentence written in wobbly capitals, "I am going to get better." He had looked at those words, and he had felt something crack inside him, something that had been frozen for years. something that had been locked away in the deepest recesses of his heart, something that he had thought was dead. He had felt hope. Hope of all things. Hope, that most irrational of emotions, that most foolish of illusions, that most human of responses to the impossible. He had felt hope, and he had hated himself for it. He turned away from the window. The rain was falling harder now, drumming against the glass, filling the apartment with a soft, insistent rhythm. He walked to his desk and sat down. He opened his laptop. He stared at the blank screen. He had been working on a new book, a book that would serve as his final testament, his last word on the subject that had consumed his life. He had been calling it A Quiet Exit, a title that reflected his belief that the only dignified response to existence was to turn away from it, to refuse the gamble, to embrace the peace of non-existence. But now, staring at that blank screen, he found that he could not write. The words would not come. The arguments that had once flowed so easily, so effortlessly, so convincingly, had deserted him. They had fled to some dark corner of his mind, and they were refusing to come out. He had lost his faith. That was the truth of it. He had lost his faith in the philosophy that had defined his life. He had lost his faith in the arguments that had given him purpose. He had lost his faith in the certainty that had sustained him through decades of isolation and loneliness. He had lost his faith, and he did not know what to do with the emptiness that remained. He thought about his sister. He thought about the way she had looked at him in the hospital corridor, her eyes full of hope and fear, and a love that had survived everything. He thought about the way she had held him, the way she had refused to let go. He thought about the way she had shown him her world, had opened it up to him like a gift, had invited him to see what she saw. He had seen it. He had seen the joy. He had seen the love. He had seen the meaning. And he had been forced to confront the possibility that his philosophy was not a shield, but a cage. That he had not been protecting himself from suffering, but imprisoning himself in a world of his own making. He thought about Julian. He thought about the young man's burning eyes, his trembling hands, his absolute certainty. He thought about the conference in Chicago, the believers who had looked at him with such adoration, such devotion. He thought about the way Julian had spoken of action, of the logical conclusion of their beliefs. He decided to call his sister. He picked up his phone. He scrolled through his contacts. He found her name. He pressed the call button. She answered on the second ring. Elias? Her voice was warm, surprised, full of the tentative hope that had been there since their reconciliation. Is everything all right? Yes, he said. No, I don't know. There was a pause on the other end. He could hear her breathing. He could hear the faint sounds of her household in the background. A child's laughter, the clatter of dishes, the hum of a life being lived. Tell me, she said. He took a breath. He did not know where to start. He did not know how to articulate the chaos that was churning inside him. He did not know how to tell her that his certainties were crumbling, that his faith was gone, that he no longer believed in the things he had spent his life arguing. Clara, he said, I don't know what I believe anymore. Another pause. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. Tell me about it. He told her. He told her about the doubt that had crept into his mind and the questions that would not stop, and the arguments that no longer convinced him, and about the philosophy that felt like a cage. He told her about Sophia and the drawings and the hope that had cracked through his armor. I don't know who I am anymore, he said. I don't know what I stand for. I don't know if anything I've done has been right. She listened. She did not interrupt. She did not offer solutions. She simply listened. And when he was finished, she spoke. Elias, she said, I don't know if you were right or wrong, if your philosophy was true or false, if the things you believed were good or bad, but I know that you are my brother and that I love you. I know that you are trying. That is enough. He felt the tears begin to form. He had not cried in years. He had not allowed himself to cry, but now, sitting in his study, listening to his sister's voice, he felt the tears come. Clara, he said, I'm afraid, I'm so afraid. I know, she said. I'm afraid too. But we can be afraid together. He did not know how to respond or what to say. He simply sat there, holding the phone, feeling the tears run down his cheeks. And for the first time, in as long as he could remember, he did not feel alone. He hung up the phone. He sat in the silence of his study. The rain was still falling, drumming against the glass. The city was still alive, humming with its endless energy. He looked at the blank screen of his laptop, at the blinking cursor, at the infinite potential of a page that had not yet been written. He thought about the doubt, and he did not fight it. He let it be. Let it sit beside him. Let it become part of him. And he began to type. Dear Clara, he wrote, I'm writing to you because I need to tell you that I have lost my faith. I no longer believe in the arguments that have defined my life. I need to tell you that I was wrong about everything, and I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to live with the knowledge that I spent my entire life arguing against the very things that give life meaning. I don't know how to live with the knowledge that I pushed away everyone who ever tried to love me. I don't know how to live with the knowledge that I have hurt you, Clara. I don't know how to live with the knowledge that I have hurt you so deeply. He stopped. The tears were falling again. He did not wipe them away. He let them fall. I don't know if I can make it right or if I can undo the damage I've done. I don't know if I can be the brother you deserve. But I want to try. I want to try, Clara. I want to try. He hit send. He put the laptop down. He walked to the window. He looked out at the city. The rain had stopped. The sun was beginning to break through the clouds. The city was glittering, alive, full of the promise of a new day. He watched the sun rise and how the light spread across the buildings. He watched the world turn. He thought about the book he had been trying to write. A Quiet Exit. The title felt wrong now. It felt like a lie, like the argument of a man who had been hiding from the world. He needed to write something else, something honest, something true. He started to type. This is not a book of philosophy, but a book of confession. This is a book about a man who spent his life building walls, and who is now trying to tear them down. A man who was wrong, and who is trying to find his way back to the truth. I do not know if I will find the truth, but I want to try. I want to try because trying is the only thing that matters. Trying is the only thing that is real. Trying is the only thing that gives life meaning. He stood up from his desk and walked to the window. The sun was shining now. The city was glittering. The world was alive. He stood at the window, watching the light spread across the buildings. He let it become part of him. And he began to live.